Hello, welcome back, my Royal Rogues. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue, and we are beginning to cover the visit to Colombia by the Duke and Duchess of Sausages, but with a cat. First of all, we have to send our best birthday wishes to Princess Anne, who today is her 74th birthday. An amazing woman with an amazing achievement in in terms of all that she does for the royal family as a working royal. Is perhaps one of the hardest working royals ever. So happy birthday to her. And we continue with the visit of the dastardly duo, and the catch that I'm talking about. It's something that is quite delicate for us creators here in YouTube, and it thanks big shout out to Murky Meg who spotted this. First thing I noticed about these Harry and Meghan photos, most photos from the Colombia trip, that they are already there with the vice president, is the Archwell trademark in the bottom left, which means anyone using this photo can receive a DMCA takedown notice. We can get our channels into trouble. And I don't want to get my channel into trouble. Second thing, why is she lugging around a big white bag to an engagement event? That's why I resorted to creating the most accurate possible image with AI. This cannot be taken down because this is not an actual photo, but it replicates what is going on in, well, Colombia with Harry and Meghan. Meghan was wearing a navy blue dress with black shoes, which everybody was talking about. Well, it's something that I don't know. It works in men when we wear a navy suit, black shoes. But in women, I don't know. But I would like to know what is your opinion on this. But yes, she was carrying this big white handbag to their first encounter with Colombia's VP, and it was a bit odd to watch. What is she using that big white handbag for? Is she carrying something in there, or is for taking souvenirs home, or maybe emeralds, maybe baby powder? I don't know, but maybe souvenirs for the kids. Who it's your guess is as good as mine. And before we go with another of our
Assalamu alaikum, live from Gaza. Want to acknowledge and thank
AI generated images. We got this from Stephanie Sidley. Thank you, Stephanie. Big shout out to your channel as well, the Sidley twins. Vice President Marcus mentioned in her briefing today that Princess Diana was scheduled to visit Colombia in 1997 before her death. Looks like they played the Diana card sooner than we thought. Shameful. Because you know that we have all these recurring themes over and over again, and they have to exploit the Diana card over and over again. Why? It's because there's nothing new about Harry and Meghan. And you remember that Colombia, one of the reasons that Colombia's VPs was inviting Harry and Meghan was for the enrichment and the defending women's rights and innovation and whatever was the other thing is the online bullying stuff, which Meghan somehow knows, even if she never had social media accounts after she was engaged to Harry and all this stuff, and there was no comments open in none of those uh, uh, programs and shows that she made. And we also have reactions thanks to Diana on X, reactions just below the VP's speech welcoming Harry and Meghan. Such stupid achievements of this government bringing to ordinary American citizens. And that visit would be more than just a tax expense. How would it benefit Colombia? It was a very rough. These are one of the best ones. Such CC achievements of this government, inviting a couple of parasites who don't even have a degree, wanting to spend money on nonsense just because this idiot saw them in a series of Netflix. Incredible. Yes, this is something that Colombia's VP said, that oh, she thought of inviting them because she saw them on a Netflix series. What the f is this real? Are we living in a simulation? But tell the Colombians how much they paid to bring this pair of freeloaders, pure strategic smoke to divert the disastrous misgovernment of Petro Gustavo. How much does it cost to bring this pair? They earn millions of euros. They say this visit is so important. What is Meghan Markle's merit? Marrying a prince? Better tell us how much it costs us to bring this pair of good for nothing celebrities. And there's something that the VP said on that speech before she was talking about Harry and Meghan. She said that she was happy that she finally made the 25th of July the day of women and girls from African descent. The kind of things that it is nice, okay, like having a date for them, but then at the end of the day, this is just a way to distract from the actual things, and that's what the visit of Harry and Meghan was for, just distract from the real issues that Colombians are going through with Gustavo Petro's presidency and government. And this is another AI picture that I just got generated. And this is pretty much how was encounter of Meghan and the VP. It was not that close at all. It was not warm. Was very diplomatic. Even Harry's approach to greeting the VP was a bit more warm, but not so much. And when Harry was greeting the VP, Meghan was almost between them. Like she had to, be there somehow. Meghan had her picture with Francia Marquez, but when it was Harry's turn, Meghan had to be, in the picture as well, because that Harry cannot do anything by himself. It always has to include Meghan in some form or another. And this is something that they put on their archway well, the Sussex.com website. In her official residence, Vice President Marquez hosted the couple for a formal audience. Over coffee, tea, and delicious pat de bono, the Vice President shared her vision and love for Colombia, passion for mental health, and devotion to preventing online harms. Again, this is all, it's feeling, not feeling that feelings or emotions, feeling that, trying to feel an empty space, a smoke screen, trying to do something to distract from their non-achievements as government. I don't want to get too political about that, but sadly, this is what we can work with right now, these AI images. I don't want to get my channel into trouble. And also, big shout out to Harry's great suit. Prince Harry will not attend Uncle's funeral due to security fears. I asked Grok, which is Twitter's AI, about Harold not going to his uncle's funeral, and this is what the answer was. Even Grok knows he's full of manure. And Grok says, in a shocking twist of events, Prince Harry has decided to skip out on his own uncle's funeral due to security fears. But don't worry, he will be braving the dangerous wilds of Colombia instead. After all, what's a little international kidnapping when you've got the UK's most wanted security risk to avoid? Maybe if Robert Fellows had been buried in Medellin, Harry would have made the trip. But again, my rogues, I would love to know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. Much love and bliss.
I've been waking up sweaty and warm even with our aircon on blast. I've been looking for a mattress that will make me feel
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
The Royal Rogue, and we are here today to expose the latest lie about Meghan Markle and Netflix. And I cannot believe how I'm talking about this because I thought that Meghan and Harry had ran out of imagination for all the things that they come up with. The latest developments on that CBS interview were, stomach churning enough, but this is another level. Let's read this. New York Post. Is Meghan Markle the next Martha Stewart? Duchess is delaying Jam launch for this strategic reason. Experts. And there's another thing on the Daily Mail that better explains that. Meghan's brand troubles. Duchess of Sussex's new lifestyle venture, American Riviera Orchard, suffers setback over irregularities in her application for a trademark. But what I want to mention, what I'm going to tell you, that this is simply not true. Whatever the Daily Mail or the New York Post are publishing, I don't know where are they getting their sources. You know that you can trust your Royal Rogue sources. It is believed that Netflix, which has just finished filming a cookery show with the what? With the Duchess is taking over the commercial exploitation of the brand American Riviera Orchard, so it would be safe to assume it will pay the fees. This is blatantly false. Netflix has nothing to do with a brand that we already know was launched before it was even a good idea, even if it was logical to be launched. You know that Megan did this just to uh, outstage, to steal the spotlight from Catherine, and now they want to make it seem that Netflix is helping. We already know that the cookery show is not moving forward, and they have this. They even have this. Let me see.
How did I manifest my dream husband in just 2 weeks? I used a certain set of manifestation.
That's my slide. Netflix, these are the claims. I'm going to explain why are they fake. Netflix has now turbocharged the plans for American Riviera Orchard, taking over all executive roles and delivering deals with wholesalers, designers, growers, and retailers. Since when has Netflix, the streaming giant, streaming content, generate content, and we already know how the content, the streaming content wars have gone lately. I've showed you the numbers. It's a kill or be killed industry. It will take around 8 months for the trademark applications to be examined and up to 14 months for them to be registered. That wouldn't matter. These people are speaking nonsense. It is not necessary for a trademark to be registered to begin using it. You can already begin to use it. You are already using it. Megan is already using it when she revealed on Instagram her American Riviera Orchard. She's already using the brand. she could already launch the brand, and that would set a precedent, a legal precedent, that nobody else would dare to use the same brand, because this is just a formality. You can move forward with the brand. This is just a justification to say, oh, we haven't moved forward because we are expecting this. But that would also, at the same time, just signal that they don't know. Archwell, Meghan and Harry and Archwell don't have a clue of what they are doing. And that is a signal for anybody who wants to do business with Harry and Meghan, that they do this kind of things without thinking. Why do you precipitate a brand out there without knowing when it's going to your cooking show go online, when it's going to be on? And this means that come May next year, we're talking about what, 10 months, she should be all systems go with the brand and the cookery show she has filmed to accompany it. Next smartest to work? No, because you have to put in the work. You have to be out there with people. You cannot pretend to not have social media presence, to just have a ultra curated video showing your very fake smile, or in your podcast not showing your face and trying to make it seem that you're actually interviewing people. That doesn't cut with anybody anymore. You need to be out there. You need to be interacting with your community, with your audience, with them on Instagram, on TikTok, on whatever platform you choose. That doesn't. Meghan wants something that worked perhaps 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it might have worked. Maybe not have that much interaction with people. You can have this celebrity cooking show, and you can launch a brand of whatever she's going to sell, of all that stuff that she's registering. But right now, in 2024, and especially how they are lost all that relevance thanks to their own actions. First, I don't buy it. Second, I know how entertainment business works, and no, Netflix cannot afford to, okay, let's allocate some of our resources to Megan's American Riviera Hotel brand. I don't know how that works. It's like I don't know. You have a pizza business, and all of a sudden you're gonna sell lobster, but not lobster pizza. Lobster pizza will be a good idea, but no, you're gonna just try to focus on a complete different things. I don't know. You sell pizza, and you are you're going to spin off into a plumbing business. I don't know, something that just doesn't make any sense. So next time you see headlines like this, I will be there to just rip them apart, because it's just baffling that they still want to fool everybody into thinking that, well, they are doing something. And just to say, before we say goodbye, I want to mention this. The Invictus Games Foundation support the work of the Invictus Games Foundation today, so we can continue to help the international service community. Donate. What? I would love to donate to the Invictus Games, but remember how much they spent on private security for Meghan and Harry, because I don't know who they believe who they are, like this international diplomats, or I don't know who they believe they are, and how much private security do they require. That is part of the narrative that Harry wants to push out there. And well, it costs money, and it is costing the reputation of the Invictus Games, and I don't think the veterans deserve that treatment. But that is what's happening, and that's what we got from the articles today. But I would love to know what you think about this in the comments. My Royal Rogues, my name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. Much love and bliss.
Jollibee Mix and Match combos. Now with 6 mains and 6 sides. Starts at 75 pesos.
Channel, I've been thinking about the British royal family and how they deal with politics. I mean, remember that I'm still a novice in many aspects of British culture, and I saw not fans of the royal family, but people who usually criticize the royal family, demanding that the king should say something, anything. Some even suggested that William should mount a horse and somehow make Britain great again, along those lines. But jokes aside, it's kind of interesting when you really get into it. Like, they're supposed to stay neutral and not get involved in political stuff. But it's not always that simple. For one, it's actually kind of baked into how the UK government works. It's not written down in some big rule book or anything, but it's like an unspoken agreement that everyone follows. First off, there's this idea of constitutional convention. Those are fancy words, yes, but it basically just means that the king or queen isn't supposed to go around telling everyone what they think about politics. It's been this way for ages, and it's part of what keeps the monarchy, well, neutral. There are some written laws that relate to the monarchy and its powers, like the Bill of Rights from 1689 or the Act of Settlement from 1701. These laws limit the monarch's power in some ways, but the specific idea that the royals should be politically neutral, that's mostly based on convention and tradition. Then you've got the prime minister and the rest of the government. They are the ones who are supposed to deal with all the political stuff. If there's a riot or some kind of protest, it's not the king who is going to come out and make a statement. It's going to be the prime minister or maybe some other government big shot. But there's a funny thing, though. Sometimes the monarch does make public statements, but they usually don't just decide to do it on their own. They talk to the prime minister first. It's like they are checking to make sure whatever they're going to say isn't going to cause a big political mess. And then there's the whole media and public opinion thing. People in Britain, they kind of expect the royals to stay out of politics. The newspapers and TV shows, they're always watching, waiting for the royals to slip up and say something political. If they did, oh boy, it would be all over the news. People would be talking about it for weeks. It's like the royals are walking this really fine line all the time. They've got to seem interested and involved in what's going on in the country, but not so involved that they're taking sides. It must be pretty tricky, always watching what you say, making sure that you don't accidentally let your real opinions slip up. And let's start with Queen Elizabeth II. She was on the throne for a very long time, 70 years, and that's a lot of years to keep your mouth shut about politics, right? But she was really good at it. I mean, she had to deal with this motley crew of prime ministers, and she never really said what she thought about any of them. There was this one time back in 1975 when things got a bit tricky. It wasn't in the UK, but in Australia. See, the Queen is also the head of state there, and there was this big political mess. The prime minister got fired by the governor general, who was like the queen's representative in Australia. A lot of people thought the queen should step in and do something, but she didn't. She just let them sort it out themselves. That's kind of how she rolled, staying out of it even when things got messy. But not everyone in the royal family found it as easy as the queen did. Take Prince Charles, who's now King Charles III. He's always been a bit more.
Sige. Yan nga pakaya siya. Nang sige.
Outspoken, I guess you could say. He's really into things like the environment and architecture, and he hasn't always been shy about saying what he thinks. In 2015, there was this whole thing with what they call the Black Spider memos. Strange name, right? I thought it had to do with some Spider-Man or Marvel stuff, but no, it's because Charles has this really scribbly handwriting. Anyway, these were letters he wrote to government ministers between 2004 and 2005. He was writing about all sorts of things, from farming to buildings, and when these letters came out, it caused a bit of a stir. People were asking if it was okay for him to be trying to influence the government like that. And Charles seemed to realize he needed to tone it down as he got closer to becoming king. And in 2018, when he turned 70, he was in this documentary where he made it clear that being king would be different from being Prince of Wales. So he knows he's got to change his approach now that he's on the throne. But there was also Brexit, not Mexit, Brexit. Man, that was a mess. It really divided the country, and everyone was watching to see if the royals would say anything about it. And in 2019, the Queen gave this speech at the Women's Institute. She didn't mention Brexit directly, but she talked about people coming together and finding common ground. A lot of people thought that she was hinting relevant if you can't say what you think about the big issues of the day. Well, and then there's the whole question of whether it's even right for them to stay out of politics. Some people argue that if the royals have so much influence, they should use it for good. But then others say that any political involvement from them is undemocratic. It's not just about what they say either. Even the charities they support or the countries they visit on royal tours can be seen as political statements. Everything they do is analyzed and picked apart. I guess the big question is whether this whole neutrality thing is sustainable in the long term. As society changes so fast, will people still accept having a head of state who can't express opinion on important issues? Or will the royals have to find a new way of engaging with politics and society? It is a balancing act, really. They've got to be seen as caring about what's going on in the country, but not like they are taking sides. They need to be involved enough to seem relevant, but not so involved that they seem as interfering. In the end, I suppose it comes down to trust. We trust that the royal family is acting in the best interest of the country, even if they are not saying exactly what they think. Think of that as making a statement. By staying neutral, they are doing what's best for the monarchy and the country in the long run. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out in the coming years. With Charles on the throne now and William next in line, we might see some changes in how the royals handle this whole neutrality thing. But I reckon they will still be pretty careful about it. After all, it has worked well for them so far. But I would love to know, what do you think about this in the
And so I think there was an awful lot invested in Andrew and Fergie, and there were great hopes for the future, but sadly they all dissipated within 2 or 3 years.
Do you know what I remember about Andrew and Fergie's wedding? My cat died that night.
Oh.
We were in Australia watching it in the middle of the night live.
Well, I was actually there too, not as a reporter in the Abbey, but
Page boy.
as a child in the crowds in the Mall.
Yeah.
And
Why am I not surprised?
I was. I'm afraid.
Budding diarist even then, Richard.
I was so short that my memory of the day is using a periscope. So everything I saw of the carriages rushing past was through this little periscope to see
did you
over
have
the
your little
crowds.
Union Jack hat on?
I may have done. We were there with some friends visiting from Canada. So yeah, no, it was a great day.
I love that. I need photos. We need next week the montage of Richard Eden at Andrew and Sarah's wedding. But what do you think? You know, royal weddings always a boost for the economy, a boost for morale. But what would a royal re-wedding be like? How would that be received?
Well, the mind boggles. But remember, we've had register office weddings before, of course, with our king. King Charles and Camilla got married at Windsor Register Office, and they had a service of blessing afterwards. So there's no reason why Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, might not have a service of blessing for...
Just nip round to the garden again?
Well, it might be a backyard ceremony like it was, for Harry and Meghan a few days earlier.
Yeah.
So he's available for all these kind of ceremonies. So, I think why not have a party again? I mean, maybe not. I'm not sure we'll have crowds in the Mall, frankly, but it could be, maybe a few crowds outside Windsor Register Office.
Don't pretend you wouldn't be there with your periscope again.
Well, come on, the guest list would be great, wouldn't it? Who would be on that guest list?
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, you know the Duchess a bit. Well, probably more than a bit. If you were a very close friend of hers, what would you advise her?
Run. I mean, flippantly, but I'm not sure it would be good for either of them, I have to say. Then they'd be really entwined together, and if things ever go wrong, they're both going to get pulled down, aren't
where's
they?
your sense of romance? Come on.
I'm not the most romantic type anyway,
Rebecca?
Richard.
They're pretty down, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
There's only one way, and it's up.
That's true. I mean, obviously, there is a friendship there, isn't there, that clearly gives them both comfort. And to be fair, they've been great parents. Their daughters are a real credit to them, so they've done something right. I'm not sure they need to go a little bit further and kind of put an official stamp on it.
But let's remember that they've been acting, like a married couple for years. I mean, I remember Rebecca, revealing a great story that they bought a Swiss ski chalet together. This was years ago. It's since been sold, as well as living together at Windsor. So they're almost like a married couple now, aren't they?
Actually, it just reminded me, my young son saw the story I'd written about Fergie this week, and he said, he couldn't pronounce Fergie. He said, who's this Fergus woman? And I said, well, she's Prince Andrew's ex-wife, but they still live together. And he just looked at me and went, why?
That sounds like Prince Philip. He always kept saying, why?
You see, the children say it as they see it, don't they?
Well, look, let's be serious for a moment, because obviously Richard Kay, after both Sarah's cancer diagnoses, she's used the opportunity to raise awareness of those conditions, breast cancer, skin cancer, and the King seemingly, or at least, followed her lead when talking about his enlarged prostate. It seems unthinkable that this would have happened even 10 years ago.
Well, I mean, there's a kind of a myth going around that the royals never shared details about their ailments. I mean, I remember when both the Queen and the Queen Mother, had hip work in the Queen Mother's case, and the Queen had knee problems, and the palace were up front and explained what they were having done. I think we've been slightly blindsided because when Prince Philip was alive, there was a lot of controversy when details of an ailment he had at the time was revealed, and he took grave exception to it and said that his privacy had been invaded. And ever since, the palace then started getting very cautious about what they said about royal ill health. And this has been quite a step change in this last couple of weeks with the revelations.
I think they did learn a big lesson after Queen Elizabeth, when she had an overnight hospital stay, and they not just kept it from us, they deliberately steered us in the wrong direction, and then it emerged she had been. And there was a great deal of anger. We're saying, if our head of state we understand that she wouldn't tell us every appointment she goes to, but if our head of state overnight having hospital tests, really we should know about it.
I chose the wooden bed for its sleek and relaxed aesthetic. I feel it matches us as a couple.
In early February, the news about the King got worse as it was revealed that he was undergoing treatment for an undisclosed form of cancer. It was a huge shock for royal watchers. Here, Rebecca and Richard Eden give us their immediate reactions.
I mean, a cancer diagnosis is a shock for anyone. It's a shock for him. It's a shock for his wife. It's a shock for his family. But they really have caught it at a very, very early stage. It's not prostate cancer, but it was discovered as a result of that operation. He went in for the other week for an enlarged prostate. And so my understanding is they found it at a very, very early stage and that the prognosis is incredibly good.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the palace had to decide, particularly in the wake of that openness about his previous condition, they've had to decide how to break the news. And I suppose one factor has been that they haven't wanted the king to be caught in like an underhand way going in for treatment.
Exactly, and that's actually something they've stressed to us they really want to avoid. And in being as open as they could be, they have, begged people to give him the privacy he needs and deserves, and actually is entitled to while he undergoes this treatment. And I think, we think back a few years, they would never have even discussed this normally. And I know there are some people who said, why haven't they gone further than confirm he's got cancer? Why haven't they said what kind of cancer it was? And as some of the palace said to me, it's a real balance between him being head of state and actually his rights as an individual to keep his private medical information to himself. So I think they've juggled that balance very well, I have to say, in what they've told us.
It's interesting. I've just come from doing morning television where Richard Madeley said there was a time at TVAM when you were not even allowed to say the word cancer on air. So now we're at a point where our royal family's being open about such a condition. And I think, Richard, it's probably not an exaggeration to say that the news has shocked the nation. And I think a lot of the inquisitiveness is about concern.
It really has been a shock. I mean, there's something about the royal family that sort of hits you, almost as if it's a member of your own family. And there's barely a family in Britain that hasn't been touched by cancer at some point. That word, is, as you said, was almost taboo. The C word, people didn't use the word cancer. And let's be clear how sort of historically important this is. There has never been a monarch of our country where they've said that he had cancer. I mean, remember that, in the case of his grandfather, George VI, he underwent an operation and they just said that it was to do with structural changes to his lungs. He actually had a lung removed because of it was so cancerous.
That is a structural change.
Yeah, and he wasn't even told himself what had happened exactly. So, for them to make this announcement in this way, really is sort of momentous.
One result of this news was that the role and responsibility of Prince William was With Catherine still recuperating from surgery, a scandal blew up over a seemingly innocuous Mother's Day portrait of the Princess of Wales and the children released by Kensington Palace, after it was revealed that the picture had been digitally manipulated. Here, Rebecca, Richard and Charlotte Griffiths explain the uproar, with many agreeing with Rebecca's comments to Catherine's Charles to just back off and leave her alone.
I think probably it's best encapsulated by a piece I wrote for the Daily Mail on Wednesday, and I spoke to a lot of, I suppose I would describe them as allies of the princess, people in the household, outside the household, but with very close links. And all of them are of one opinion, as am I have to say, that what happened shouldn't have happened. It was a mistake. But she, within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, had come online and very openly said, look, this is my fault. I'm sorry. And the people I've spoken to think, look, that should be accepted. A line should be drawn underneath it, and she should be allowed to move on. It doesn't negate the fact that there was a mistake in the first place. And I think it's worth mentioning, because it was in that piece of mine, that
AI image generation has been all the rage for a year. You can find AI pictures everywhere.
people I've spoken to have said that Catherine is not unaware, although she doesn't have her own social media presence, she's not unaware of a lot of the speculation that we've seen about her health and welfare over recent weeks. And there's been some really vicious, nasty and slanderous stuff out there on social media. She is aware of it, and she has found it very, very upsetting. And I think, you know, all of us, I mean, we all get a lot of trolling on social media because of the jobs that we do, and that's not an nth of what she gets. And I think that's a lot of weight on her shoulders, particularly at a time where she's recovering from what clearly is serious surgery. And I think people just need to back off and leave her alone.
Why do we think it just got so crazy?
I mean, I do think it wasn't this whole situation, I do think it hasn't been handled particularly well by Kensington Palace, in as much as there was a little bit of naivety that, you know, one of the world's most famous women could suddenly go out of the public eye for 3 months and people not to speculate about it. And I think, as I said in my piece, often that speculation came from a good place, that people are very fond of her. And we just want to know, is everything okay with her?
Yeah.
So I think they should have come out and said something earlier rather than just wait to what they traditionally do on Mother's Day. I know that's their policy, but in this day and age, sometimes you've got to tap dance a little bit more cleverly around that. But I think what we've seen directed at her is just, you know, unbearable for anybody, let alone someone who's just trying to recuperate from really serious surgery.
Obviously, lots of people are saying, come on, it's not a big deal. It's just a devoted mother making a few edits to a family photograph, which they've shared with us, which is completely true. But what turned it into a big story was, it's the first time I've ever known that an official photograph from the royal family has been rejected by the world's biggest picture agencies. And, you know, also because it's the first official photograph we've seen of Catherine since Christmas Day, there was huge interest in it. So there's that. But also it taps into this wider issue of trust. All of us in the media at the moment face this issue of how do we deal with AI and the ability for anyone, which is being promoted by the mobile phone companies, to change your photos. You can go out now, someone can send us a photo from the street, do some adjusting and send it to us. And it might not be quite actually what happened.
Yeah.
So those agencies, just like other organizations like us, have policies now that we don't use it. But obviously there was a lot of sympathy from all of us towards Catherine over it.
I think it's worth, sorry to interrupt, but pointing out that some people are asking, well, how does this differ from all the kind of heavily edited photographs we see celebrities putting on their Instagram accounts? And it's a valid question. But as you were rightly saying, Richard, and I don't think people probably understand this, is that, yes, the picture was put up on their social media by Kensington Palace to start off with, but then 5 minutes later it was issued by the palace to these news agencies to distribute in the normal way as a news image. And as you rightly say, they are subject to very strict rules because people are so worried about the use of picture manipulation and AI, to the extent, and I didn't realise this until this week, they're not even allowed to put out a picture of someone that's had just the red eye from the flash rubbed out of it.
Oh, really?
They can't even do that. It has to be a really authentic news moment. I mean, people do maybe adjust the tone of a picture, you know, maybe lighten a few shadows, but that is it. They can't put out an image that, say, a hand appears to have been moved or something like that. They're just not allowed to do that. So they had no choice.
Shows how
really.
good.
Done a good turn.
Indeed. Now, Rebecca, the other thing that this sad news has shown us is that the bond between the King and the Princess of Wales is closer than ever.
It is. I mean, it It is. I mean, they've always had a very good relationship because they've bonded over kind of art and the music. And I think I've written about in the past how they would often go for secret trips together to the Royal Opera House that no one ever knew about. But obviously now they have, I mean, it's sad because obviously no one wants to share a bond like cancer, but they do. And we've had reports which have been confirmed is that the day after she filmed her video message, the King invited her for lunch with him at Windsor Castle. So they've got something to talk about. And I know he really admires her for the, I think, solidity she's brought to his son's life. He thinks she's a brilliant mother and is bringing up his grandchildren fantastically. So he's already got a lot of admiration for her. But I know he's also had a lot of admiration for the way she's conducted herself throughout this, you know, admittedly with a lot of people poking her with a stick. And also equally, I think she, from what I hear, was quite inspired by his openness about his own diagnosis and the treatment that he was going through as well.
Well, some people, Richard, have said that actually that has helped pave the way for Catherine and to give her the confidence to go public.
Yes, I think from all we hear, King Charles was interested and perhaps a bit worried about the reaction to his talking about cancer. We've discussed in the past how monarchs would never want to indicate that, you know, they've had cancer. It is a first. And he was very heartened by the reaction, that it was sympathetic and positive. It encouraged talk among people and people willing to discuss cancer. And so that's encouraged Catherine to do the same. So it's definitely a positive thing.
Speaking of Catherine, here are some of our favourite pictures of the now There were some unwelcome headlines for Meghan Markle following an interview with a former senior palace courtier. Natasha Livingston and Richard Kay explain, while Richard Eden explains his story about Meghan's podcast plans hitting another snag.
Samantha Cohen worked for the Queen, I think, for around 17 years, so she was incredibly well experienced, and then went on to work for the Sussexes, and then left after, I think it was about 2 years. So she didn't stay with them for that long and did the job, I think, on the request really of the Queen. She's not spoken publicly about this time. You know, obviously loyal royal aides are normally very tight-lipped about these sort of things. But she is Australian and was interviewed by the Herald Sun in Australia, and they were asking her about the allegations of bullying against Meghan Markle, which I'm sure viewers will be aware of. It created a lot of headlines here, even though Meghan Markle and her lawyers have always steadfastly denied it. And she revealed that she was interviewed by palace officials about these allegations, and she didn't go further than that to comment on the allegations or give any more detail. But it's quite significant because we know a number of staff were interviewed, but not who. So now it's the question, will this perhaps embolden other members of staff to step forward and talk about it? But yeah, it's quite an interesting thing that she's revealed.
It is interesting. Now, as Natasha says, we should stress that lawyers for Meghan have denied all of these bullying claims. But Richard Kay, the point about that Tom Bower made, that echoing again, Natasha, that he feels that it will embolden more people to come forward. Do you think that's true?
It might, but I suspect a lot of the people who were interviewed for the course of that inquiry had already signed NDA, non-disclosure agreements, which would put them in deep trouble if they were to open their mouths. Also, as Natasha pointed out, Samantha was a very senior courtier, worked at the highest level of Buckingham Palace, whereas we know for a fact that many of the people interviewed for the inquiry are much more junior staff and may not feel as emboldened to come forward. But look, anything is possible. And if there is a sort of a crack in this, and the fact that this report has been buried and not been made public has annoyed and upset a lot of people who feel it should be. So maybe that may well happen.
Yes, indeed, Richard. Even it does, to many people, feel like it raises more questions than answers them, doesn't it, this whole episode?
It's a very unsatisfactory situation all round.
Hi, I'm William from AI Rev, and today I'm here to present to you On Demand. On Demand is the world's first decentralized large language model operating system that is tailored for your company's workloads. On Demand is also equipped for rapid deployment of
To Buckingham Palace, the news coincided with a controversial new portrait of King Charles. Here is Rebecca English and the two Richards, Kay and Eden.
Last week I was at the first one of the season and it was working as always. I keep on telling them we don't even get to eat or drink. We're just racing around after people
here's
with
my
our
tiny
nose
violin.
books. I know.
Yeah.
But what was lovely about it was the King was back. And I had an exclusive actually the weekend before, just saying that he was going to be attending his first garden party of the year. Now the doctors have given him the go-ahead to do so. And actually what was lovely was he was so enthusiastic about it. I mean, he's clearly a man that's undergoing treatment. He doesn't look as well as he did, say, 18 months ago. But he was in just a really jolly mood and was, glad-handing as many people as he could. And I was warned in advance that they might try to tweak a little bit, that he might do 45 minutes instead of hour of meeting the public. He might shake less hands. But of course, he listened to none of that and wanted to meet and greet as many people as possible.
I did seem to be enjoying meeting the very glamorous women there, I must say.
Well, wouldn't you? I mean, it's a great opportunity to get out your hats and your posh frocks. And
there was all the models like Rosie Huntington-Whiteley and
that was the one this week. They did
yesterday.
Yeah, they did a special garden party for the entertainment and arts industry. And there was a great moment with Maya Jama when she said, I host this program called Love Island. I'm not sure you will have seen it. And he was like, well, there's one porn every minute. He was being quite skittish.
I didn't actually understand that. What did he mean by that?
I think it's to do with kind of love, and she was talking about snogging and things like that. So
Blimey, he's talking about snogging with the king.
Yeah,
Mind boggles.
I can't keep track of that conversation at all. Richard Kay, back to some sense. You've been to plenty of these in your time, and now, other than being a royal correspondent like yourself and Rebecca, how does one get invited? Tell a needy, desperate Australian.
Well, it's quite hard. You can't turn up and get one from a scalper from a ticket tout outside. You have to be invited. You can't apply for a ticket. Usually guests are chosen randomly from all walks of life.
Randomly?
Randomly, yes. By local government, by national government, the Lord Lieutenants of all our esteemed shire counties have a hand in who gets invited. People's names are put forward and then they get a list and they try to get am I right, Rebecca, sort of a representation, a cross-section of people from society, old and young, new and old, whatever. And
I like the idea of maybe one day my name will be randomly put into this big tombola and it'll come out and I'll finally get to go.
It could be something like that. And they are a very entertaining opportunity for people watching.
And do they have any issues with people trying to snaffle little souvenirs?
Well, they did one year, because I was actually there that year, and it hailed, the heavens open. I've never seen hail like golf balls. And these tents aren't that big, so people were trying to shelter under them. So the minute the diplomatic / royalty tent exited, which is basically when the royal stay on Sunday night. She was out walking about 9:15, lovely summer's evening in the UK. And it looks like she was either struck by the head or the legs of a horse. And I say looks like, we don't know, because she suffered terrible concussion and minor head injuries and can't actually remember what led up to the incident. But what we do know is that she did receive emergency treatment on the estate on the night, and it was deemed necessary to rush her to hospital by ambulance to Bristol, which is about 45 minutes drive away from her, but it is a major trauma response centre and does have neurospecialists there, and she remains there as you know, today is when we're filming the program.
I feel slightly like it's my fault. I do remember last week saying what person or beast would mess with Princess Anne, and here we are. I mean, horses are scary. They really are. Richard, it's been pointed out, though, that this isn't Anne's first visit to hospital, and she's not massively known as a very patient patient.
No, I mean, she was involved in a very serious accident involving a horse before, where she came off her horse while riding and the horse fell on top of her. She had a sort of hairline fracture of a vertebrae, I think, and again, she was concussed. But in a sign of how strong she is, this was the I think 1976, when she then went on to compete at the Montreal Olympics in Canada. But obviously that's a long, long time ago, and concussion, as you get older, she's in her 70s now, of course, it's being taken very seriously, so it is worrying. But yes, there have been reports about when she's been in hospital before, and she has, not wanted any nonsense. She's just, let's get on with it type of thing. But we've seen her husband, Tim Lawrence, visiting her twice, Sarah visiting. So we know it's serious.
Oh God, I hope she's all right though.
I mean, on a more kind of slightly light-hearted note, what I did love is when Tim Lawrence visited her on the first occasion, he was carrying this kind of blue plastic cool box, the kind of thing that we've all got shoved away at the back of one of our cupboards somewhere. And when he was asked, he said, "Oh, it's just a few treats from home." And I just love the fact that Princess Anne is having a lunch basically bought in a normal cool box to the hospital, like any of us would.
Well, come on, hospital food can be quite boring.
What do you think's in there? Nice Kit Kat crunchy? What?
And of course, it's worth pointing out she's in an NHS hospital, which is effectively a state hospital here. So it's not a kind of big, fancy private facility. There's no major security there. She really is there as pretty much as another patient. So
in a tough year, there was some time.
Harry and Meghan, they have just touched down in Colombia's capital city of Bogota, where they were greeted by Vice President Francia Marquez and, we're reliably informed, some traditional dancers. Well, there you go. There's also first town celebrates Afro-Colombian culture. There will also be events dedicated to the Invictus Games, mental health, female empowerment. But many Colombians think the Sussexes are just being used as political pawns by the failing left-wing government to divert attention from the regime's many scandals. Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm now joined by Mail Online's senior global reporter, Nick Pisa, who is on the ground in Bogota in Colombia. Nick, look, great to have you on the show. One thing that I think seems very odd to me is that this appears to be a royal tour from a couple that don't want to be royals.
Yes, that's right. And it has all the trappings with the security as well that's involved. We've seen 14-car and police van convoys carrying the Sussexes through the streets of Bogota since they arrived this morning. They've been on 4 engagements since they arrived. The first one meeting the Vice President, Francia Marquez, then they went on to a school, and then they went on to this cultural exhibition in the city centre where there was some traditional dancing, some very colourful costumes, and you saw in that clip there that Harry and Meghan got up and danced around, clapped their hands, and they met those dancers afterwards as well. There's a bit of controversy with the Vice President, Francia Marquez, over the fact that she seems to travel everywhere by helicopter, but we should say she has been subjected to several death threats and also several attempted assassinations. In fact, one only 2 months ago on her father, where a car that he was travelling in with her nephew was riddled with bullets, but fortunately both of them escaped unhurt. Yeah, well, fortunately they did, but again, it does raise serious questions about why Harry thinks that Great Britain might be a little bit too unsafe for him, but he's happy to stand next to someone who has, unfortunately, quite literally got a target on her back. Can I ask, what is the point of this trip? Because some people are saying, well, you're kind of just doing peace. Son of the Colombian president is
is up on money laundering charges, I think, in relation to drug traffickers in his own father's campaign.
That's right. I mean, there hasn't been that much interest from the ordinary Colombians that I've managed to speak to in the street. A lot of them, obviously, they know who they are, but they're just wondering what on earth they are going to do here. Obviously, their agenda is to promote cyberbullying. They're saying highlight women's empowerment, as you said in the introduction, and also look at the country's heritage and history. There's obviously a very strong link with Afro-Caribbean, and we know Meghan on the visit to that village, which was the first free town for African slaves later on over the weekend. But yes, there are concerns from the Colombians that maybe this is distracting from other more serious events domestically as well. They are concerned about the tensions between Colombia and Venezuela over the recent election over there. And they are focusing on the fact that maybe more should be done, focusing on the relationships with neighbouring countries as opposed to maybe this tour.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. So you think that Meghan is possibly, given the nature of some of the itinerary that we've outlined here, going to be trying to emphasise her own cultural roots while simultaneously bringing an education on cyberbullying to people in rural Colombia?
I think so. Yes, definitely. I say the village that they're going to up near Cali was set up about 300 years ago. It's a free town set up by slaves who used to be in that area of South America, in that area of Colombia, and it has a very long history and heritage with Africa. And I think there will be a lot of emphasis on the connection to Africa when she visits that area with Harry at the weekend.
So just to emphasise, so from what you can gather, you're on the ground, quite a lot of local apathy from people there saying we're not really that bothered about them, why are they here? Massive security presence, so what, about 15 armoured cars? Go on, just talk to us about what it is like, that security presence, go on.
Well, so they've closed off the streets surrounding the school that they visited, and they closed off the streets surrounding the cultural centre that they visited earlier today as well. And there is, as I say, a 15-car convoy that is following them around. There's also armed soldiers with them as well. The security is quite immense. And I think also we have to focus, not only is that security on them, but also on the fact that, as I say, there have been these death threats to the Vice President, Francia Marquez.
Yeah, no, indeed. All right. Well, look, can I just say thank you very much for coming on and giving us, just a bit of a glimpse, really, what it's like on the ground. I would hope to chat to you again soon, actually, Nick. So thank you very much. It's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Unbelievably happy about closing during the coronavirus crisis. Very slow to get back to work. Loads of them, and I actually know this firsthand, loads of them decided to close early last week over this mythical threat of the far-right riots around the country that never actually happened, right? So any excuse, it seems. I mean, people say you should put a doctor's receptionist in charge of the channel because they never let anyone in.
It's very true.
And now we're looking to 11% funding rise for surgeries. Is this right?
There's a few things I say. I really didn't like the language that the BMA used, talking about bringing the NHS to a stop. That sounded unbelievably aggressive. Bearing in mind, this is a patient's, the NHS service, not the government. The second piece to be said, I returned to my theme early on. The junior doctors never wanted 35%. They pitched it there for political reasons and for negotiation reasons, and they've got this large payout. And I said then, if you give them that, right, everybody else will come for it. And let's be very clear, if you're a union leader, that is your job. You sat there and saw that resolution, so you've come for this resolution. And the only thing I want to say, I want to pay everybody as much as they should be, but let's be clear, it's people who often earn significantly less and definitely don't have the same kind of pension who are going to have to foot this bill. the last thing to say as well, one of the headlines talked about our economy growing, right? The reason our economy is growing is because of the work that a previous government put in. And it doesn't matter how much it grows because Labour are spending more than we're bringing in.
Why did he call the election when he did?
Exactly.
Oh, well, exactly.
Can I just say that this is actually, I will come to you, Matthew, but I'm going to get it short as a Tory here. I mean, you look at stuff like this with the economy, why the flipping heck did Rishi Sunak call the election when he did?
Do you know the worst thing he did with the election? He surprised all of us in the Tory poll. Like, what's going on? Look, he'll go to his grave with that piece of information. But the point,
or Malibu first.
Via Malibu.
the economy is growing because of the work the previous government did. This government are now about to squander it.
All right, Matthew. I worry that the message that, especially the GPs thing, sends out actually is that if you hold public health to ransom, if you hold people's health to ransom, you get a payout.
Well, I think there's a particular issue with the GPs, which is that the public's disquiet about the GP part of the health service is probably the greatest of all its concerns about the health service. I mean, a cynic might suggest they're saying capping the number of appointments. I thought they did that anyway. I mean, you know, my GP practice doesn't have a thing as an appointment now. It was all telephone triage way before COVID. So, you know, good luck if you ever actually physically see a doctor. So I think what we need is wholesale reform of GP's practice. One of the mistakes, and I admit to a mistake that the last Labour government made was when John Reid, who was health secretary to keep the GPs happy, got them to sign a contract, which is when they stopped doing all out of hours work, and which you stuff their mouths with gold. And that is, you speak to John, he would regret that. And that was one of the government's mistakes because they didn't get enough back in return for the deal. So a new settlement, not just a big check.
Well, let's just keep it health, really, because the World Health Organization, which is formerly known as monkeypox, were diagnosed in the Democratic Republic of Congo with more than 500 deaths recorded so far. And despite the UK Health Security Agency confirming today that there are currently no known cases in this country, well, apparently Sweden tonight has just reported its first case of the more dangerous and contagious Mpox strain. Now, well, I mean, should we be worried about this? I mean, because look, from where I'm sitting, you know, we've got the World Health Organization, which I think at times has been an absolute joke and a bit of a disgrace, actually. People are a bit sick of these kind of global health warnings and the fear that comes with it. But, I mean, I don't know. It's in Sweden now.
Well, there's two things to be said. Firstly, I wanted our authorities to say anybody coming from that said country will be screened. Anybody who's been anywhere near that country will be screened. That's what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear it's a very low risk. And the second thing, the World Health Organization need to be very careful about issuing these reports, because if they're not real, these alerts, then we'll start to ignore them. So they need to give us what the parameters are and stick to them.
Well, the other problem is that we've got Labour in charge, and Labour last time called for longer and harder lockdowns. So I'm worried they're going to any excuse to put us all in lockdown for.
Well, so we've had two interesting ones there. Whether if this does erupt, I mean, that's looking obviously, you know, a bit into the future. Hopefully it doesn't. But if it did erupt, would we all go into lockdown? I think the more immediate thing, Matthew, might be kind of what Sean raised there, which is, should we be now just shutting the borders to?
Well, I think health screening is a perfect thing. I mean, it was actually a bit of a previous Mpox scare because there were cases were found in the gay community about 18 months, 2 years ago, and there was a vaccine program. So I'm vaccinated.
Oh, really?
But